In Morocco, Berber girl Ito lives in the palace of her rich family-in-law that's located in the middle of the desert, with countless servants at her disposal. Her husband Amin is the son of local Qaid Mustafa, a businessman and local fixer, and Hajar, who is cold and hostile towards her daughter-in-law. Perhaps it is related to her lower-class upbringing. She wholeheartedly embraces their religion and lifestyle, while finally finding a purpose in her miserable existence. She's a wide-eyed and lithe woman with a large pregnant belly. She looks stubborn yet brittle. Despite the abundant love and money, something suggests that Ito isn't entirely happy with her privileged status. At the house, the servants joke in the kitchen, enjoying Ito's company until Hajar comes over and sends her away. Ito and her husband Amin are looking forward to the comfortable future that his lucrative latest business deal will provide. But even as he paints a verbal picture of the home they will build, his phone rings and his mother demands his attention. For Amin, the dutiful son, family comes first. Amin married her for love, not her social standing, and now she's the poor Berber tribe woman who sits uncomfortably at the dinner table of this powerful and judgmental Moroccan family. While the family, captured mostly in static longshots, sit in iPad-enhanced quiet, Ito and Amin are conversing in their bedroom. She mentions his mother not wanting her in their family, that she wanted him to marry a rich girl and not a hick who is nobody's daughter. When the family head off to visit the governor in Khouribga, Ito deliberately stays behind. She experiences a cathartic sense of freedom as soon as her husband walks out of the door. Finally, alone, Ito relishes a day to herself, snacking on candy and temporarily discarding the strictly enforced rules of etiquette. She listens to loud music and dances, entirely unaware that disaster is about to hit. Then a massive storm strikes and she gets a call from her husband telling her that roadblocks are preventing his return, causing her to grow anxious. Army vehicles tear past the gate of the family compound. Soldiers with loudhailers urge her to stay indoors. Inside, she prays and goes to bed. Amin calls her again in the morning to let her know that they can't leave. She insists on going to where they are instead of waiting at the house. So, Amin arranges for a peasant, Moha, to transport Ito to Khouribga. Moha has also gathered his family to take them along, much to Ito's dismay. While on the road, she tries to use her phone, but there's no network. She is also unsure if they're going the right direction and asks Moha about it, but he says they're going over the mountains to avoid the roadblocks. After some time, they stop at a small Berber village, not too dissimilar to where she grew up, for a break. There, Ito gets a signal enough to let her know that her suspicions about where they're going were true. She confronts Moha, who then says that he'll drop his kids off at the Atlas Mountains in case something happens and will come back for her, and her reminding him of getting paid to transport her doesn't change his mind as well. So, she decides to give him some money, after which he agrees. Afterwards, she goes outside and befriends a street dog by giving him her food. Unfortunately, Moha decides to abandon Ito despite taking her money again. She tries to chase after him, but to no avail. With Amin and his family stranded in the town of Khouribga, Ito is left to fend for herself entirely on her own. Regardless, she finds comfort in the fact that she is carrying large sums of money. She calls and tells Amin what happened, and he tells her to stay at a hotel for the time being. She finds one and pays in advance. She also lets the street dog from earlier stay with her. The owner of the hotel is Fuad, who is a middle-aged, kind and honest non-believer. He asks her if she needs anything, and even offers Ito shelter at his parents' house, assuring his mother and sister will look after her. It's not safe for a woman to stay in a hotel on her own, he explains. Ito snaps at him, asserting that she's paying to get peace and quiet, not to run away because she's alone. So, Fuad apologizes and leaves to bring her only what she asked for. Afterward, Ito puts on a leash on the dog and goes outside for a walk. Suddenly, a crazy man approaches her, claiming that his animals are possessed by the devil, and her dog too. The dog gets defensive and bites the man's leg, who lays unconscious for a few seconds before getting up and saying he's fine. He utters, "Everything is going to be all right." Later, she comes out of her room and sits at a table. Fuad approaches and asks if she wants to eat, to which she accepts. Ito asks him what's going on, as there's no signal, and Fuad replies that the government won't disclose anything. But soon enough, things start to get weird. The local street dog sits silently in a circle. The birds seem to be watching her every move. Something is in the air, but curiously, Ito feels less threatened by the anomalies of the natural world than she is by the gazes of the hard-eyed local men who resent the fact that she, a young woman, is traveling on her own. In the morning, Ito tries to steal a motorbike that belongs to Fuad, but he catches her, who at first proudly refused his help, now is begging him to take her to Kurigba. He says he has to deliver barley. She tries to buy him off, assuming that money is the only currency available. But Fuad is a selfless human being with no pecuniary interests. So, he tells her to get lost. Ito eventually speaks Berber to Fuad, instead of the two most highly regarded French and Arabic language, over which she has perfect command. That's when she begins to reconnect with her roots. He agrees to first deliver the barley and take her destinate. So, they set off on a road trip towards Kurigba. She leaves the dog behind, who couldn't catch up despite his best effort. After a while of driving, they reach the first checkpoint at his parents' house, where they'll also be staying the night. That night, Fuad finds her praying and asks if she feels better. She confronts him about his beliefs, and he argues that if there was a god, he'd help the poor, not her. It's like adding water to the sea, he says. She advises that he doesn't talk like that, as only true believers will be saved on Judgment Day. The next morning, they bid goodbye and got back on the road. They drive through a desolate town and make a stop to get some food, but the owner isn't there. The news reports of supernatural events happening, claiming aliens' arrival, which forced the country to declare a state of emergency and block off the city. Hundreds of thousands are flocking to holy places over this unique event, which explains why there's no one around. Continuing their journey, Ito is praying when they come across a mysterious adolescent hitchhiker. He is also headed toward Kurigba, so he joins them. His gaze is firm, and he has a permanent smirk attached to his face. It's not clear whether he's arrogant, sadistic, or if he's holding a secret. He says his family went to Kuribga before him, and that a big prayer is being held. When Ito says, "May God hear you and protect us," the boy muses, "God is more elusive than a black ant on a black stone on a dark night." The three end up inside a paranormal sandstorm, with blue lights emanating from the sky. Berber culture is rumored to have connections with extraterrestrial activities, which may explain the origin of the phenomenon. Reality, dream, and hallucination spin around vertiginously inside the whirlwind. Visions are twisted and distorted. The outcome is beautiful and affecting. Fuad drives toward it before exiting the motorbike and walking forward. Ito is scared and calls out to Fuad, but he doesn't answer. The boy tells her to not let fear stop her, and she walks into the storm as well. She has visions of her in-laws, Amin, and finally, a flock of sheep, which she hugs one of them as she cries. We then come back to reality, with the boy keeping his smirk face toward Ito. Ito forsakes the telluric and the material in favor of an elusive new purpose, illustrated by the cryptic imagery. And so, the journey resumes and they finally arrive at Kurigba, where there are a lot of people trying to enter as well. She asks the boy if what she saw was real. He says the physical world is based on a more complex one. Like fish, who don't see the water they're in, we're immersed in something we don't see either, the boy reflects. The two part as Fuad takes her away to try and get her in the city. When the soldier refuses, Fuad tells her to bribe him, after which he asks for her name, and she tells him along with her being the Qaid's daughter-in-law. They get out of the crowd and wait until someone comes for her. As they wait, Ito asks Fuad if the weird things she saw happened to him too. She mentions the one about the flock of sheep, saying she felt like it was her family, and the head sheep, the one she hugged, was her mother. She then opens up about her past life. Her parents were simple people, exploited for their honesty. She states that their poverty drove her crazy, but then they passed. She felt alone and guilty until she met Amin, which then her loneliness went away. She found a new family and forgot her past, and she wonders if there's a meaning to all this. Fuad simply answers that they must find one in any case. Shortly after, she hears her name being called and quickly runs into the crowd, finding Amin waiting for her. After they embrace, she tells Amin that Fuad is the one that helped her. Amin tries to give him money, but Fuad declines. She thanks him, and the couple head into the city. The family is staying at the governor's house, and when Ito walks in, everyone is focused on the news. Soon, Hajar greets her before telling her to take a shower. After dinner, Ito expresses her doubts about their belief to Amin and asks her to get some rest as she's tired. But Ito continues to argue, saying he's never serious. Amin isn't having any of it and urges her to let it go. She feels like she can't share what's in her heart without worrying about him judging her. He says she can tell him every but Ito challenges him if he won't think she's crazy for saying she has seen their world, that they're among them, meaning the aliens. His look proves her right. She leaves the room and gets a sandwich from the fridge while exploring the house. She then lies on the couch and watches a video about the aliens, with the man explaining that they live in the intermediate world and are a part of it. She falls asleep there and is woken up in the morning by Hajar and instructs her to get dressed for prayers. Her sister-in-law, Noor, picks her clothes and they head out to the mosque. Due to the heavy traffic, Mustafa tells them to go inside while he finds a parking space. As they're walking, Ito sees a bird plucking someone and feels unsure about her beliefs and tries to go back, but Hajar forces her to stay. Since the men and women do their prayers separately, Amin splits up from the women, but Ito asks him to stay with her, defying the protocol. But he leaves anyway. After they find a spot to pray, Ito again sees the strange behaviors of the birds, adding to her worries. Meanwhile, Amin is seen sobbing as he prays. He also diverts his attention to the birds. Back to Ito, she finds an ant in her ear and starts to go frantic as Noor tells her everything will be all right. Suddenly, Ito gets up and runs toward her husband, who doesn't look good either. The men inside are furious and demand for her to get out as her water breaks. The boy is also seen standing across the crowd, still having that smirk on his face. After being escorted out of the mosque, she's promptly taken to a hospital and gives birth to her baby. That night, her baby crying wakes her up and she makes a call to the hospital staff, but no one answers. She comes down with the baby and finds a nurse crying, who claims she saw they no longer existed. Her encounter with the aliens leads her to a deeper understanding of herself and the universe. She sheds her previous fears and constraints, symbolically represented by her emerging from a cocoon-like state. The final scene is after some time when her baby has begun crawling. She carries her baby and walks into the horizon as the screen fades to black. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.